Hey, Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Yeah.
I'd like to start by speaking with you about your transition. You started from electrical engineering to founding an influencer marketing platform, things that people usually will not connect
Mhm.
because they are just so far away. I'd like to understand what actually motivated this transition and, of course, the challenge that come behind it.
That's a great question. I mean, looking back, I was a little surprised too, right? When I graduated from university, right, as an electrical engineer, I quickly went into the finance industry actually, right? And doing programming for, trading algorithms, right? So you could automate, you know, software code that will help you trade, buy and sell stocks, right, on its own. So that was actually my first few years after graduation, right? My first job. And from there, I became very, what's the right word? Just very alone, I guess, right? I'm trying to find a better word, but I think, you're coding, you're trading, you don't really interact with many people, maybe a few colleagues, right? Who are
Mm.
brilliant, smart people, but usually you're on your own, you're trading US hours, you're sleeping at 3, 4 a.m., right? In Singapore time, right? And then with US time, it's trading hours, right? Market hours. So every night, sleeping at 3 or 4 a.m., waking up at 11, 12 p.m., right? And then repeating that. So I won't say the money is bad, right? It's really interesting at that time. But after a while, you're like, I'm not really interacting or socializing with people. What does hanging out with people feel like anymore, right? So I really thought, I don't think I can do this for another 10, 20 years, right? So, or even maybe 5 years. So I tried to, I wanted to move into more, not just trading the US stock market, let's say, but also investing into companies, right? Maybe it's private companies, public companies, and trying to get to know people. I think my goal I realized was I think I need some socialization, right? With people, right? And I also wanted to see if I could make an impact and see it tangibly, right? In people's faces and things like that. So after that, I moved into investment into, I guess, like private equity, right? Private companies, right? So invest in private companies, especially tech companies, because that's a little bit of my background in terms of engineering, right? A little bit. So after I started investing on behalf of the company, right? Then I learned this whole world of tech, right? And wow, the tech is growing very fast, whether it's an app, whether it's computer chips, hardware, all these things are very, very interesting to me, right? That's what I study a little bit. And so we invested in the company, and then later on, I joined that company, right, to take care of its tech team. And that's
Mm.
kind of how I got started. And I was like, hey, actually, I can do an okay job. It's not bad, and it's fun. I'm learning a lot at, age 20, 25 or so. And after that, I kind of wanted to come out and do my own thing, right? I was about 27, 28, 2017 or so. And I was thinking to myself, if I don't start a company now with this cool startup thing that everybody's talking about, I may not get a chance if I get married, have kids, who knows? So I convinced two of my other friends that I studied in university with, right? And one is actually from Taiwan, actually, and the other one's from Indonesia. So very diverse at the time. People were like, wow, you guys are not all based in Singapore, right? And I convinced them to join and start this company. And like you said, it's very different influencer marketing, right? We actually didn't call it influencer marketing at the beginning. We actually called it like word of mouth marketing, right? We were really going down to the regular people, everyday people. It's only later when we approached, investors, clients, that they said, actually, isn't that influencer marketing, but for regular people? Just call it like micro or nano, right? Like it's the same thing, right? So like, oh, okay, wow, one catchphrase can define it much better, right? Than that. So that's a little bit of a story of how it started. We just wanted to build something and we saw a market need, right? And yeah, since then I think we've been started in Singapore and now we're in 8 different markets. So it's been growing very fast and it's a very challenging and interesting ride.
I read a health newsletter recently about how regular socializing actually add to your lifespan. So I must say you made the right choice in leaving your previous trading job that made you so alone. I would imagine you're more of a solo contributor when you were doing trading. And then when you joined the company, the startup, you were slowly then managing your team and all that, of course, picking up lessons along the way. Then you started Partipost, which also meant that your understanding or your experience in managing teams, which is required of a company, is quite limited, which is a good segue for my next question, because I do understand that your parents are significant influence in your life. Did they shape your style of management, your style of leadership? Are there any specific lessons that you picked up from them?
Definitely, definitely. My mom is like a small entrepreneur, right? She owned a like a kind of like a small mart, convenience mart, kind of like 7-Eleven, right? Back in the day, right? Until she had me and my sister, and then she started becoming more full-time mom, right? My dad has always been starting his own companies, right? So he's in the semiconductor computer chip industry, right? And doing a lot of different things. He's basically the one who I definitely look up to a lot. I mean, just I guess everybody does, right? When they look up to their dad when they're young. But that's what you think is a job, right? When you're young, you're like, "Hey, my dad is doing this. He's traveling in the week over the week." That's the way things are, right? And only on hindsight, after graduation, right? After university graduation, I was like, wow. And you start working, you're like, wow, money is really hard to make, right? I've been spending my parents' money, and I was like, oh, this is not so bad, right? So, and then only once you start working, you realize how difficult it is when he's earning. His work ethic is, I think, almost second to none, right? That I've seen. I thought it was normal, but he's working from, 9 to 10 every day, at least,
Mhm.
right? 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And he told me a story, which was on Friday. One day, I think we're having dinner on Friday pretty late. And he said, I look forward to Mondays. Why is it a weekend? I was like, huh, are you okay? I think me and my friends don't think that way, right? We're working, we're like, is something wrong with me? Is it my job that I don't like, or something wrong with you, Dad, right? Like, why do you look forward to Mondays? I heard of people saying the opposite, Monday blues. No one wants to
Mm.
work. So I think on one hand, he really enjoys his job, but just the amount of discipline and work ethic, he doesn't enjoy every day, right? I think, the day-to-day stuff, but I can see his success, I think, stems from that work and the hard work ethic, discipline that he put in. So very, very inspiring. I'm not recommending everyone to think like that, right? But
Mhm.
it's something that I look up to. Yeah.
I personally am a parent or a father of four, so I'm
Wow.
becoming very cautious about the things that I do. They do observe, hey, why you always work until so late? Always at a dining table, take up our space and all that. But I guess, in the long run, hopefully they may grow up to be like you and appreciate the kind of ethics that I put out there. Could you help us to understand a bit about how it was like when you first started to the current state of the
Mm,
industry, where even political parties are inviting influencers to their tea party, to the ceremony?
wow.
What has
True.
changed? What is going on?
We started around 2017, 2018, right? And the scene back then was very different, right? Similar and different in many ways. Back then, the term micro nano influencer was non-existent, right? And for us, it was a tough time, right? We were approaching a lot of brands. I was just basically messaging my friends, hey, do you want to post and make money? They're like, what is this, a scam? What's going on, right? What are you trying to do, right? Why are you in the scam industry, John, right? So, but one step at a time, we built case studies. We worked with brands. They tried it out. They said, can I work with 10 micro influencers? I want to see ROI, right? So we tested it out. I remember my first clients. I won't name who, right? But I remember the first, I think 9 meetings I had, I got rejected, right? From the different brands. They said, I've never heard of you. You have no credentials, no case studies. And what's a micro nano influencer anyway, right? It was only until we paid for the first client to use. We said, hey, I'll give you the money for free. You just run a
Wow.
campaign for me, right? And I'll take care of it. I just want to see if it works, right? And then they're like, okay, sure, but we still have to put in time to check things and run it, right? You still owe us a favor, right? So I still remember those days. And back then, I think the traditional influencer was very, very popular, right? Working with, the Xiaxues and all those type of,
Mm.
really big influencers really was the way to go, right? And so changing their mindset from that to using a little bit of micro nano influencers was a big challenge. And I think you talked about, politicians, right? And political parties. I think certain industries also, right? Alcohol, cigarettes, all these kind of things. A bunch of, I think things have opened up and been more transparent nowadays. I think it's moving in the right direction, right? But back
Mm-hmm.
then, yeah, there's a lot of, I still remember a political party in a certain country. I won't name which country did reach out to us, right? And said, hey, can we spend some money and can you get your micro influencers to say they voted for me? I'm like, huh? But they didn't vote, or they will vote for me, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm not sure if this is the right, principles that we have as a company, right? To do
Mm-hmm.
these kind of things. And I think we don't touch politicians, we don't touch certain industries in our company. I think there's still a line drawn now. Even though the money may be very good, but I think we still have to, draw a hard line at some of these things.
What are some of the benefits for companies out there to consider working with micro or nano influencers compared to the larger, more established influencers that probably most of us would know, the Xiaxue, the
Yeah.
Mr. Brown, so on and so forth?
Yeah. When we talk to our clients and brands that work with us, we still tell them we do look at kind of what is their goals, marketing goals, right? What are they trying to achieve, business goals? And then we look from there, right? That do they need a bigger influencer to push their messaging across, to associate with, right? And I think the most important thing is two parts, right? That I've learned. One is you need to find the right match, the authentic match to your brand, right? Meaning the brand has to find the right authentic influencer, right? Whether it's a big influencer or a small one, right? Micro, nano, or macro, we call it, right? I think the most important is finding the right match, right? And the second part, which I've learned throughout the years, is the best is to show that is a consistent and frequent thing, right? For example, if I was a influencer, let's say, and I'm posting for, let's say, McDonald's, right? I love McDonald's, let's say, right? Which is true. And I'll, let's say I post once about it, right? My friends know I'm authentic about it. That's good. But
Mhm.
the optics to some people who don't know me, maybe, hey, he's just posting something, he's getting paid for it, right? If I am posting multiple times, I'm like, hey, I think I'm going next week again. I'm doing this for a year or 2 years, right? Posting about it every day, every week, let's say, maybe not every day. There's that consistency, right?
Mm.
And we've seen the best results from that kind of thing. And it's kind of like an ambassador for your brand, right? You've all seen those influencers, the traditional ones. I think they have no choice also. They need to earn some money, right? But they're posting
Mhm.
about 10 different competing brands, right? They're posting about beauty brands here and there and whatever, right? And people know that they're sponsored. Right, let's face it, right? You have to do the hashtag advertising and stuff like that. But they're also balancing making a living, right? So but the optics is there, right? So I think what we do with the micros and nanos is we also supplement the bigger influencers with, you know, maybe someone like you is 200 followers only, right? But doesn't mind to post about something you love,
Mhm.
right? And it comes off as more authentic, right? And not every brand want to work with you, right? So if they see that, wow, you're into this kind of brand, you've been posting about these kind of things, they would want to pay you a little bit, work with you, or sponsor you something, right? And what we bring as a platform is we're able to find the right micro nano influencers for you. We do a
Mhm.
lot of surveys and, have a lot of data to say, hey, this is a student from this university living in this area that likes to eat Japanese food, let's say, right? Then that brand will actually want to work with that kind of profile to talk about their food, try out their food, and things like that. So I would say we are quite different than the typical traditional influencer, right?
Mm.
And I believe that we're a bit more scalable also, right? Because we just have there's a lot of nano micro influencers, right? Because anyone can be one, right? Yeah, so I think that's our difference. We're scalable, and I believe we are more authentic in some ways.
So one of the key takeaway that I get is the repetition really matters. And I
Yes.
really like that point because if I don't do something and then out of the blue, I just do that thing once, it is quite obvious. But which also means for companies that are looking to engage any form of influencers, that recurrence is important. You cannot just do one engagement and expect magic to happen. Magic wouldn't happen that way. But of course, at the same time, I think to your point earlier on, influencers also have to be a bit cautious about not being all over the place. Like, for instance, I followed Simon Boy for some time, but
Mm.
recently I unfollowed him because I just felt that he's all over the place and there are
Yeah.
literally no space for organic content because every single post he's putting out there are just sponsored posts, 1 sponsored post, 2 sponsored posts, 3.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And I think that naturally would be, of course, it makes sense for him to just maximize whatever reach he has right now. But I think there has to be a strong balance for influencers to look at and consider as well. Now, given where we are right now in this age of AI, I've also noticed in some of the newsletters that I follow, especially in the Western world, AI influencer is a thing right now.
Mhm.
I'd like to get your take on what is the state of this AI influencer thing in this part of the world, and where do you see this heading? Is this really something that you believe organizations would be able to make good use of, or would it just fan out and die a natural death?
AI is kind of the talk of the town right now, right? Across the world, not just an influencer, right? Not just an AI virtual influencer, but across all industries. I've seen, was it Capital Land or a few other different organizations try out this AI influencer thing, right? It has actually, I'm not sure their ultimate KPIs or goals, but to me, as an observer, it seemed quite successful, right? They had a AI influencer, virtual influencer, and they grew the following. And later on, I think they claimed it. They said, oh, actually, it was an experiment that we did, right, to test it out. So I think honestly, I think it's one part of the future. I don't think
Mm.
that it will replace real people. We still want to follow real people, right? We still want to follow our friends and to know what we're doing. But I think it'll be another, I guess, you can make an analogy to like a anime character, right? Or a mascot, right? Or another brand basically that you're following, right?
Mm.
And I think equivalent to like, let's say a celebrity, right? A singer or something like that, right? But they're just virtual, right? So I think it's another one of those more complementary rather than the replacement of all the influencers now, right? Because the technology is there to generate these avatars, right? These characters, these virtual influencers, but they still need substance, right? What's appealing about these AI influencers? It's still the content that they create. Are they, resonating with you as a follower? If you don't get that, the followers will not grow, I feel, right? So someone still has to be the brain behind it. Maybe 10 years later, ChatGPT is so good, and then you can put that kind of AI brain in, and then you're like, wow, this is so interesting. This is more interesting than my friend. Okay, maybe, right? So I think it's really about the creativity still, the substance behind it, but I don't think it will eradicate or take away from regular influencers in the short term.
Mm. I realize for myself, whenever I'm very interested in someone, whether they're influencer or personality, I would go into their backstory. I would see their history. I'll go to their Wikipedia page if they have one. And these are something that, well, any form of AI character wouldn't have. You may have, okay, this was invented last year through a code base that took me 5 minutes to generate. That's
Yeah.
about it. You don't really get a sense of, I would say, you can't find any commonality that can resonate with that person because many times when we look at personality, big character, we want to have something, oh, he went to that school. I also went to that school, Those are
Yes.
stuff that I believe would pull people together. There's something else that I also want to check and get your thoughts on, and that is on the influencer marketing space within the realm of B2B. Many years ago, and I think it could probably even be before the start of Partipost, I remember I was in a panel discussion, and that session was around B2B influencer. But even until today, I don't really see that very much happening. Contrast
Mm,
it to, of course, the Western part of the world, a lot. They always has a lot more than what we have in Asia or maybe just in Singapore.
mm.
Where do you see this B2B, or maybe you can just share with us, based on your understanding, what's the state of B2B influencer marketing in this part of the world? And where do you see it?
Recently, we had a potential client, right, reach out to me personally, actually, because it's a friend, and they requested to work with you, Adrian,
Oh,
as a
really?
B2B LinkedIn influencer. Yeah, I was like, whoa, and then I'm gonna be on your show soon. I'll try to tell you, right? But since you asked me this question, I would say it's still in its infancy, right? But we are getting more and more inquiries, but only recently in the last, 6 to 12 months, right? A bit more recently about, hey, I think we can do like these organizations, these companies are thinking about, can we use an Adrian, right, to write on their LinkedIn, show up in their podcast like an advertisement to shout out about our brand, right? So I think LinkedIn, which is taking off, right? Everyone's using LinkedIn, but no one has really utilized it the way they use it in Instagram in terms of sponsorships in TikTok. I think it's coming soon,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it just takes a bit of maybe a platform like us or others in the industry coming together to be like, hey Adrian, would you post about this brand? The only thing I think takes a bit longer is because I feel that the LinkedIn influencers or the B2B influencers would be even pickier. And they have the
Mm,
right to be, right? Because you're not going to post about any other brand, every day, right? Like, whoever sponsors me, I post about it, right? I think I guess I could be posting about brands too, right? As an entrepreneur, having a little bit of influence on my LinkedIn, right? I have to be careful, right? If, let's say, a certain phone brand tells me to take their phone and talk about it like I use it every day, it's not true. And
mm-hmm.
so if I go to, business meetings and my clients say, hey, why you post about this phone brand, but you actually use this one every day? I don't really trust you, right? So we have to be careful what we're posting, I think, even more as, business owners, B2B, influencers, that kind of thing, right? Not to say that the normal influencers shouldn't care about those things, right? But they seem to care less right now, right? With posting about different things, right? Yeah,
That's
but
true.
I think you might agree to that point, right?
Whether they are B2C or B2B or even B2G influencer, one of the
Yeah.
key things that many influencers are concerned about payments. And I know this industry faces criticism regarding delayed payments. I also recall some influencer putting out a IG stop, basically naming and shaming a client for not paying her over 24 months, if I'm not wrong. What is going on here? Is this something really that common? And how is Partipost able to support and to resolve or even to prevent such things from happening?
It has been a challenge since the beginning for us, especially when we work with, I think, bigger clients, right? And as we're growing and working with more and more, they typically pay us, whether it's 30 days later, all the way up to some clients 120 days later, right? So I think that has been a very, I'm a person who naturally likes challenges, right? But to start a business, right? You need to like have some fight in you. But I think this part, it is what it is. But at the same time, I'm not a big fan, right? I like paying people on time, right? I'd rather sacrifice my own salary or something. But with the amount of transactions our platform is doing, there inevitably are going to be some delays, right? To some influencers, maybe it's 3 months, 6 months, sometimes even. And we try to be as upfront as we can. Hey, this payment might come to you 3 months later, 6 months later, because the brand is paying us, in this time, right? So we do our best, but even then, clients don't always pay on time, right? So we do have to be cautious about it and apologize profusely to our influencers all the time, right? If we have to pay first ourselves, we try to do it as best as we can, but we can't get to everyone, right? So I think it's an ongoing issue. I I have a few solutions to it that we're doing
Mhm.
and we're working on very hard, whether it's, you know, kind of like taking a loan, right? And paying it off first, and we know the client will pay us later. There's some risk to that, right? And perhaps if the influencer wants the money earlier, maybe we have to take 1 or 2% away, right? If they're okay with it. So we're trying to build a kind of a few solutions to that throughout this year and next year to kind of combat that.
For emerging influencers that's out there on their own, do you think there are any red flags they could potentially pick up while they are negotiating with potential clients to get a sense that, okay, this person likely would be, in Singapore terms, what we're going to call a cao ka? Because you know that they're not going to be very prompt in their payment. Do you see such signs during your discussion with all the different brands, all the different companies out there?
It's definitely very difficult for a first-time influencer or an influencer starting out, especially if they don't really know the brand very well or the business very well that they're working with, right? You can kind of like, do some hearsay, be like, hey, how is it working with them? You can see if they collaborated with, or the payment terms. Secretly, I would love to do some kind of like, kind of like historical data kind of review, right, of
Hmm.
payment terms from clients, right? And do that. But also, it's also not the most accurate. A lot of people change at those companies, right? People who change from that, I mean, let's say this marketing person works at X company, might change to another company soon, right? And then the whole structure changes that they suddenly pay on time. So holding that kind of rating to them, also hard to say, right?
Mm.
So yeah, I love to hear more solutions on it, like I said. But I think some signs is I still kind of push all the influencers that we have and also our team to get some upfront payment as much as possible, right? Maybe it's just half, or maybe it's even 30%. And I think that's kind of the best we can do right now.
For people who is keen to learn more about Partipost or
Mm.
even to speak with yourself, where can they go to?
Definitely you can, if it's me, you can always add me on LinkedIn, right? And message me. I'm very open to having coffee chats or meeting people. I think it's always very interesting to meeting people. Partipost, I think you can go onto our website. Please download our app, right? Adrian, you can be a nano influencer for us as well, right? Yeah, so you could try it out too, right? And I always love feedback from the ground, right? And say, hey, I think certain things can be improved. Maybe we can't fix it overnight, but it's something we want to figure out, within the next 3 to 6 months. So yeah, very happy to hear any feedback.
I'll download the app right after this call. And with that, thank you so much for coming onto the show and to share with us more about this industry, Partipost history, and also your personal backstory in how all that lead up to where we are today, and of
Mm.
course influencing the industry and trying to make it even better. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thanks, Adrian, for having me. Appreciate it.